Imagine burying millions of dollars on your farm. Not in a bank, not in a safe, on a farm, in the ground. And then, when someone steals it, you try to keep the whole thing quiet. Now imagine being the president of a country when that happens. That is not a movie. That is South Africa. And today, the story just got a whole lot bigger. Welcome back. If this is your first time here, buckle up, because we do not do boring news on this channel. Today, we are breaking down one of the most explosive court rulings in South African political history. The Constitutional Court, the highest court in the land, the absolute top of the food chain when it comes to the law, has just dropped a bombshell that nobody in government can ignore. And it involves President Cyril Ramaphosa, a pile of foreign cash, a farm called Phala Phala, and a parliament that tried to sweep the whole thing under a very expensive rug. Let us go back to the beginning, because to understand why today matters, you need to understand the wild ride that brought us here.
The year is 2020. South Africa is deep in the chaos of the COVID-19 pandemic. The whole country is locked down. People cannot go to work, cannot visit family, cannot do much of anything. But on a quiet game farm in Limpopo called Phala Phala, something very unusual is happening. A theft. Not just any theft. We are talking about foreign currency, dollars, stashed inside furniture on the farm. And the amount? Reports suggest it could be in the millions. Now here is where it gets spicy. The theft was allegedly not reported to the police right away. Instead, according to reports, a private investigation was launched. Quietly, under the radar, almost like someone really did not want this getting out. And for a while, it did not. Fast forward to 2022. A whistleblower by the name of Arthur Fraser, the former head of state security, blows the lid off the whole story. He goes to the police and opens a case against none other than President Cyril Ramaphosa himself. The story explodes into the public. South Africa is gripped. The questions are flying. How much money was hidden? Where did it come from? Why was the theft covered up? And most importantly, did the president violate his oath of office?
Parliament, doing what Parliament is supposed to do, sets up what is called a Section 89 independent panel. Think of it like a special investigation team brought in specifically to look at whether the president broke the rules in a way serious enough to warrant removing him from office. Heavy stuff. The panel goes to work, reviews the evidence, and comes back with a finding that sends shockwaves through Pretoria. They say Ramaphosa may have a case to answer. Not guilty, not innocent, but yes, this is serious enough that Parliament needs to look deeper. This is the moment everything hinges on, because now Parliament has a choice. Do they adopt this report and start the process of holding the president accountable? Or do they vote it down and make it go away? And here is the part that will make your jaw drop. They voted it down. The African National Congress, which at the time still held a majority in Parliament, used that majority to vote against adopting the report. The numbers were there, the muscle was there, and just like that, the report was shelved. The inquiry never happened. Ramaphosa stayed in office, and millions of South Africans were left asking, wait, can they actually do that?
Well, today the Constitutional Court answered that question, and the answer is a very firm, very clear, absolutely not. The ConCourt has ruled that Parliament's decision to reject the Section 89 panel report was irrational and invalid. Let that sink in for a second. The highest court in South Africa has looked at what Parliament did, the vote, the majority, the whole thing, and said it does not hold up. It does not make legal sense. It was not rational, and therefore it cannot stand. Now, Julius Malema, the fiery leader of the economic freedom fighters, was right outside the court when the ruling came down. And if you know Malema, you know he was not going to let this moment pass quietly. Speaking to a crowd of EFF supporters gathered outside, Malema did not hold back. He said what a lot of people had been thinking for years. He said you cannot vote to protect criminality. You cannot vote to protect corruption because every vote must be accompanied by rationality. Read that again. Every vote must be accompanied by rationality. That is essentially what the Constitutional Court just confirmed. You cannot use a parliamentary majority as a shield. You cannot outnumber accountability. Democracy does not mean the biggest group gets to protect whoever they want from consequences. The court said so, in writing, with the full weight of the South African Constitution behind it.
And this brings us to the part of the story that changes things going forward in a massive way. The Constitutional Court has now ordered Parliament to begin an impeachment inquiry against the President. An impeachment inquiry against Cyril Ramaphosa, the sitting President of South Africa. This is not a suggestion. This is not a recommendation. This is a court order. Parliament must now do what it refused to do back in 2022. They have to go back, look at the evidence, and conduct the inquiry they tried to avoid. Now, before anyone gets too far ahead of themselves, an impeachment inquiry is not the same as removing someone from office. It is the beginning of a process, not the end of one. Parliament will have to investigate, deliberate, and go through the proper legal steps.
And with the new political landscape in South Africa, where the ANC no longer holds the majority it once had, the dynamics in that chamber are very different from what they were in 2022. But here is what makes today monumental. For years, critics said the ANC used its numbers to protect its own. They said Parliament had been turned into a shield for the powerful instead of a check on them. And today, the Constitutional Court looked at all of that and said, you were right. What happened was irrational, it was invalid, and we are not going to pretend otherwise.
This is the kind of ruling that gets written about in law textbooks. This is the kind of moment that reminds people why courts exist in the first place. Because sometimes the political process breaks down. Sometimes the people who are supposed to hold power accountable are the very people protecting it. And on those days, you need a court with the backbone to step in and say enough. South Africa has been through a lot. Corruption scandals, state capture, missing billions, the Zondo Commission, the whole messy, complicated journey of a young democracy trying to figure out what it actually stands for.
And today, whatever you think about Ramaphosa, whatever you think about the EFF, whatever your politics are, today was a reminder that no one is above the law, not even the person sitting in the union buildings. Now, here is the big question everyone is going to be asking for the next few weeks. What happens next? What does an impeachment inquiry actually look like in practice? Will this change how South Africans think about their parliament going into future elections? And perhaps most intriguingly, what will Ramaphosa do? How does a sitting president navigate an inquiry ordered by the country's highest court? Those are questions we are going to be tracking very, very closely. And trust us, this story is nowhere near over. In fact, we would argue it is just getting started. Because once Parliament begins that inquiry, every session, every vote, every piece of evidence that gets put on the table is going to be news. And we will be here for all of it. If you made it this far, you clearly care about what is happening in this country and in this world. And that is exactly why this channel exists.
We take the stories that matter, the ones with real stakes and real consequences for real people, and we break them down in a way that actually makes sense. No jargon, no spin, just the story, told straight. So here is what we need from you right now. If you found this valuable, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, there are going to be more stories just like this one. big stories. Stories that affect your life, your country, your future. And you do not want to miss a single one of them.
Because here is the thing about a ruling like today's. It does not end the conversation. It starts it. And the next chapter, nobody knows how it ends yet. Not the ANC, not the EFF, not even the lawyers. But we will find out together. Stay locked in. The best is yet to come.